What do Jackie Robinson, Fernando Valenzuela, and Ray Lamb all have in common? Well, stick around for a few minutes and I'll tell you.
Let's go! Batter up! We're taking the afternoon off. It's a beautiful day for a ball game today. The fans are out to get a ticket or two. From Walla Washington to Kalamazoo. It's a beautiful day for a home run. But even a triple's okay. We're gonna cheer and boo and raise a hullabaloo at the ball game today.
Hey everybody, it's me, Rick Acosta, the Dodger Card Collector, coming to you with another video. Today is Friday, August 12th, 2023. It's going to be a big weekend here in Los Angeles, Dodger Stadium. It's Fernando Valenzuela weekend, and tonight, Friday night, his jersey number 34 will be retired. He will be the 12th Dodger to have his number retired, and he will be the second non-Hall of Famer, including now Jim Gilliam was the first to have their number retired. So it's a pretty big deal out here for those for people who followed Fernando back in the 80s. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about that, just of the impact it was of what I remembered. I was 15 years old when Fernando arrived on the scene, and just the impact it caused, because I remembered it more from a family perspective. My family's Colombian, I've told you that, and Fernando is Mexican, but just seeing a Latino out there all of a sudden being discussed was something I had never seen before, honestly, in my life. Basically, to give you a rundown, what happened was Jerry Royce got sick, the opening day starter in 1981. And Tommy Lasorda all of a sudden just looked at Fernando, all of 20 years old. He had won 2 games late in the 1980 season. And in 1981, he just said, Fernando, I need you to pitch. And Fernando threw a complete game, 2-0 shutout. I think he shut out the Houston Astros. And he went on to win his next 8 games. And he was 8-0. He had a 0.40 ERA in those 8 games. He was the first rookie to start. I'm looking at notes here that I took down. I found an article from ESPN literally as I was about to film. He started the All-Star game as a rookie. He pitched in the deciding Game 5 of the National League Championship Series against the Montreal Expos, and he beat the New York Yankees in Game 3 of the 1981 World Series, a series that the Dodgers ended up winning in 6 games. But beyond that, it was just a major big deal. I seem to remember back then the Dodgers did something, and this is pre-cable. My town did not even have cable television in 1981. So the only way to watch the Dodgers was on the local channel, Fox affiliate, Channel 11. And back then they did something that I remember they never did before. And mind you, back then they showed maybe 50 games a season. None of them, I don't think, were home games. They started showing every game that Fernando Valenzuela started. And I thought that was really interesting that all this young rookie, comes from out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they're showing all his games on television. And it was just interesting to see this mania, Fernando mania, came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden the Dodgers started bringing in 12 to 15. The attendance rose 12 to 15,000 more on a game that Fernando would start. And this was huge in the Latino community, because the Latino community had a history with the Dodgers. It didn't go well when Dodger Stadium was built in the late 50s, early 60s. It was built on land that had a lot of Latinos, and a lot of people got kicked out of their houses. And some of them never forgave the Dodgers. And they really didn't pay attention much to the Dodgers in the 60s and the 70s. But when Fernando showed up, all of a sudden you started seeing a lot more of a Latino feel at the games. And that carries on to this day. The Dodgers estimate today that 40% of their fan base is Latino based. And that's huge. The Dodgers average they get more than 3 million fans at a game. And for those of you who happen to see the Dodgers come to your town, the Dodgers also travel well. I notice Dodger fans at every city now. It seems every time the Dodgers score a run, it seems like at least a third of the crowd starts screaming. In some cases, if they're playing in Arizona or San Diego, half the crowd is screaming for the Dodgers. And a lot of this really does have to do with Fernando Valenzuela. My big memory back then also was my family. I said my family, we still are a family of Latinos. Well, they really didn't get into American sports. They were into their soccer, their football, the World Cup every 4 years. But all of a sudden, if the name Fernando Valenzuela came up in a family gathering, all of a sudden, all the old people, when I say old people, I meant my mother and my aunt and my uncles, all of a sudden they would go off for 20 minutes talking about, oh my God, this is so amazing. Fernando Valenzuela, a guy out of nowhere, and he's doing all these things. And the younger crowd being me going, we've never heard our family discuss baseball. We've never heard our family discuss anything having to do with American sports. So for us, it was a really big phenomenon. And as I said, Another thing I remember was Tom Lasorda was being interviewed by Vin Scully about Fernando, and Tommy Lasorda went for a jog around the local high school one day, and a little Latino boy came up next to him and ran around with him, and he told Tommy that his father was going to buy a radio today so they could listen to the Dodger game. And I used to remember this. So that family didn't even have a radio back then, but they were going to buy a radio to listen to Fernando Valenzuela. But it was a great time. Fernandomania was crazy. And like I said, I remember a woman running out from the stands, kind of like an Elvira type, not Elvira, Morgana, kind of like a Morgana type, and would just come out and ran on the field and kissed them. And it just seemed like Fernando was everywhere in 1981. He had some great years from 1981 through 1985. 86 was okay. Somewhere around 1987, Lasorda was just pitching him too much, and he developed an injury. He was never the same. My last really great memory of Fernando, he pitched a no-hitter in 1990. When he found out that his former teammate and friend Dave Stewart pitched a no-hitter that night, he told everybody, I'm going to pitch one too. So that night we had 2 no-hitters in Major League Baseball. One former Dodger, one current Dodger. But Fernando was a lot of fun, and he's getting his number retired. It's a big deal out here. It might not be. I will say that I do notice other teams retire numbers of players that aren't in the Hall of Fame, and it looks like the Dodgers maybe are starting to do this. I don't know if we'll see Steve Garvey come next. I would suspect the next number they're going to retire after Fernando's will be when Clayton Kershaw finally makes it to the Hall of Fame. But we'll see. I don't expect Adrian Beltre, and I definitely know Mike Piazza will never have his number retired here. So let's see. But I wanted to talk to you tonight about Fernando. I wanted to talk to you about the Dodgers and their history of retired numbers. So we're going to take a look at that through baseball cards right now. When Peter O'Malley took over as president of the Los Angeles Dodgers in 1970, he wanted to bring back some of the past history to Los Angeles. Walter O'Malley, when he moved the team from Brooklyn to Los Angeles, he didn't want them to be referred to as them bums anymore. He never really looked back. He tried to establish an identity in Los Angeles. So when Peter took over, though, in 1970, he decided that he did want to start bringing back some of the past, hiring some of the former players into the organization, and retiring some numbers. And the first numbers they decided to retire were number 42 in honor of Jackie Robinson, number 39 in honor of Roy Campanella, and number 32, Sandy Koufax. All three of them had their numbers retired in a big ceremony on June 4th, 1972 at Dodger Stadium. All three players attended, and it was a great ceremony. And they're featured here, not in their rookie cards, but in the 1950 Bowman Jackie Robinson, 1952 Bowman Roy Campanella in the center, and a 1959 Topps Sandy Koufax. And these were the first three players we saw with their numbers retired at Dodger Stadium. It would be 5 years before we'd see another number retired, and the next one would be Hall of Fame manager Walter Alston, featured here in his 1963 Topps card. Alston wore number 24 as Dodger manager from 1954 to 1976, and his number was retired on June 5th, 1977. The next retired jersey belonged to number 19, Coach Jim Gilliam. Gilliam had the honor, until Fernando Valenzuela, coming up this weekend, he had the honor of being the only Dodger number retired that didn't belong to a Hall of Famer. Gilliam played with the Dodgers from 1953 through 1966. And then right after that, he became a coach, and he stayed with the Dodgers through his death in 1978. He was instrumental in helping a lot of the Dodgers from the 70s, especially Davey Lopes and Bill Russell, in their new positions in the infield. So he had his number retired on October 10th, 1978. Duke Snider was finally inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1980, and the Dodgers retired his number 4 on July 6th, 1980. Here, Duke is featured in probably my favorite Duke Snider card, the 1955 Topps, the first year the Dodgers ever won the World Series. The next two players had their numbers retired on the same day, July 1st, 1984. Pee Wee Reese and Don Drysdale were both inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1984. Reese wore number 1, and Don Drysdale wore number 53. Now, Reese's number 1, I do remember being worn as late as like 80 or 81, and the Dodgers had a player named Gary Weiss who was wearing it. And I remember Bill Grabarkowicz also wore number 1 in the late 60s and early 70s. So his number was still worn also long after he retired, but luckily the Dodgers got it right and retired his number in 1984. Here, Pee Wee is featured in his 1941 Play Ball rookie card, and Don Drysdale is here also in his rookie card, the 1957 Topps. It would be another 13 years before the Dodgers would retire a number, but the next number retired was number 2 for Tommy Lasorda, the Dodger manager. Lasorda took over for Hall of Fame manager Walter Alston the last 2 games of 1976, and he stayed through 1996. He had his number retired in a ceremony August 15th, 1997. And here he is featured in his 1954 Topps rookie card, the 1 year he did end up playing with the Dodgers in his playing career. He was a career minor leaguer. August 14th, 1998, the Dodgers would see a new Hall of Famer get his number retired, Don Sutton, number 20. Sutton pitched for the Dodgers from 1966 through 1980, came back for one final year in 1988. In between, he played with the Astros and the Brewers and the A's and the Angels. 300-game winner, 324 wins in total. And here he is featured in his 1978 Topps card. A number I was starting to think that would never be retired was the number 14, worn by Gil Hodges, finally making it into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2022. Hodges debuted with the Dodgers in 1943, but wouldn't become a regular until 1947, where he would stay with the Los Angeles Dodgers until 1961, before being let go in the expansion draft by the Mets in 1962 and 1963. Hodges went on to manage the 1969 New York Mets to their first World Series, So Hodges, for his time with the Dodgers, won 2 World Series as a player and 1 as a manager. And this was a number I was extremely happy to see retired. I think it's well deserved. And this card is the 1949 Bowman Gil Hodges rookie card. And the newest member to have his number retired by the Dodgers is number 34, worn by Fernando Valenzuela. Fernando played with the Dodgers from 1980 to 1990, a 6-time All-Star, 2-time World Series winner, won the Cy Young Award and the Rookie of the Year in 1981. And he also led the National League in wins in 1996, make that 1986. As I mentioned, Fernando played with the Dodgers from 1980 to 1990. No player has worn number 34 since Fernando left. This was a number that everybody thought one day might get retired. And the Dodgers finally announced at the beginning of the 2023 season that Fernando's number 34 would finally join the names of the Hall of Famers on the Dodger Stadium retired list. I don't know if Fernando will ever make it to the Baseball Hall of Fame. He's got 173 wins. We'll see. I don't know if we'll see that in our lifetime, and maybe that's why the Dodgers realized let's retire his number now. He has been a Dodger announcer, radio and TV announcer on the Spanish side for a very long time now, and he's still a very popular player. So it's good to see that Fernando's getting his number retired. And look forward to seeing the ceremony this weekend. So back to our original question. What do Jackie Robinson, Fernando Valenzuela, and Ray Lamb all have in common? Well, for starters, Ray Lamb was the last player to wear the number 42 for the Dodgers. He was the first player to wear that number since Robinson retired a dozen years earlier. He wore it for the rest of the 1969 season before the Dodgers' venerable clubhouse manager Nobi Kawano realized his error and snatched it away. The number 42 was hanging on his locker at St. Louis's Busch Stadium when he showed up from AAA Spokane on August 1st, 1969. Lamb didn't think twice about putting it on. He was a former USC pitcher who wore that number on the Trojans, so it just made sense. Now, the Dodgers initially didn't think twice about giving him the number 42. The organization had been in Los Angeles only 11 years and was still attempting to create its own local history. Since Robinson never played in Los Angeles, they were marketing their new heroes. Current Los Angeles Dodger team historian Mark Langle said that retiring Brooklyn Dodger numbers weren't just on the radar. There was a focus of establishing a Los Angeles presence. In fact, the first 10, 15 years of Dodger old-timers games usually would feature former Pacific Coast League players who played on the Los Angeles Angels or the Hollywood Stars. So what became of the famous jersey, number 42? It's not on display. Ray Lamb has 2 of them wrapped in plastic, hanging in a closet, both given to him by the Dodgers during an old-timer celebration in 2008. So, what happened to Ray Lamb after 1969 when number 42 was no longer ready for him? Well, he went from wearing Robinson's number 42 to wearing Fernando Valenzuela's number 34, thus becoming the only Dodger in history who has worn 2 numbers that will never be worn again. That's a great story. I love hearing those stories about the Dodgers. If you stuck around this long, thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time.
It's a beautiful day for a ball game today. If you and I are out of dollars and cents,
Oh, honey, we can always share a little hole in the fence.
it's a beautiful